Good morning or afternoon, or it might even be lunchtime. This is Terry with McHenry Creek Fishers, and I want to give you part 2 of HAZCOM. I've already got the first part recorded. It's on my website, and it's just kind of the basics of HAZCOM. And this time I want to go into details with the GHS system, Global Harmonization System. HAZCOM covers quite a few things. It's safely working with chemicals. One of the things I want to impress upon you is OSHA tells us and kind of warns the employee, if you're ever working around any chemicals that you're not 100% sure of the hazards, always ask somebody, see your supervisor, ask a coworker. Now, HAZCOM has a lot to do with labels. You see placards on trucks and labels on containers. You've got HMIS labels. There's all kinds. We're going to take a look at some, but we're going to look at the various ones and then concentrate on the global harmonization, the GHS. And we're going to, hopefully, my goal is to help us to where everybody can understand this. It's a little bit confusing until it's broken down a little bit, and that's what I'm going to try to do, hopefully. Now, as I told you in part 1, we work with chemicals every day. We got all kinds of cleaners and pesticides and just everything. Even Lysol spray could be a dangerous chemical. Now, they can be handled safely. There's labels. Now, most of the time we don't read them, but it does give the hazards of this chemical and whether you can use it in a closed room or make sure the windows are open. But labels at home use, over the counter, what we call it usually. Now, we use some of these same chemicals at work, but remember what I told you in the other video, the quantity and concentration is usually a little bit different. At home, we've got pints, quarts, and gallons. At work, it's 5 gallons, 55-gallon drums, big tanks, and then the concentration. A lot of things we use at home is we'll use the term watered down at home, 2 or 3% solution. We've got bleach and hydrogen peroxide, and these things are small percentage of concentration, 2 or 3, maybe 4. But at work, sometimes we've got 100%, 98%, 70%. So the quantity and the concentration make chemicals more dangerous at work typically. Now, due to this, OSHA came out with a rule. You might even look at this as this might be why OSHA was invented. People were working overexposed to chemicals, sick, some dying. So they came up with and invented HAZCOM, Hazard Communication, working safely with chemicals, the employee's right to know. And since we've added the GHS, now we're talking about the right to understand, and it makes it much easier, and hopefully we'll be able to express that today. Now, as an employee working around chemicals, we have the need and the right to know the hazards of the chemicals we work with. This is basic safety, whatever we could potentially be exposed to. Here's the breakdown from HAZCOM. You got your hazard determination, storage and everything. The employer takes care of that. There's a written program that describes who's responsible for this, how they're going to acquire the SDSs, what labeling procedures. And then there are SDSs for us to use in the workplace, labels on containers, and the GHS labels. Training's the last part, but that's where what it does, it causes us to understand the SDSs, how to read them. That's going to be HAZCOM Part 3, by the way. Labels on containers and the GHS labels is fairly new. It just helps us understand the HAZCOM standard. It helps the HAZCOM standard and your written program make the information more understandable, easier. So the GHS revisions to HAZCOM, there's identification for physical and health hazards, and we're going to look at every bit of this on the labels. Revised labeling provisions, sure. The new SDS came out of this. And also on our label and our SDSs, we'll have a signal word, the pictograms, hazard and precautionary statements, and of course, when we get to the SDSs in the next video, we'll talk about those. Primary source of information, sure, we've always known that. The manufacturer develops these chemical specific to your need, whatever you're wanting to order for chemicals. But they send this information along, and then we acquire all these SDSs. And there's so many ways. Used to, everything was in a book, different departments, booklet. Now most things are done online, intranet, some internet service you hire. But the main thing is access. Make sure all employees know how to access an SDS that they want to look at. And it can be as simple as, make sure this is in your HAZCOM program, see your supervisor, and we'll go pull it up. There can just be a simple password with computers sitting around that any employee can access an SDS at any time. Make sure access is understandable. Everybody knows how to do it. Labels help us identify what the hazards are of the material, and they're placed again on individual containers like the ones you're seeing in the picture. Now here's a broad spectrum of all the different labels you've seen. The HMAS at the top, blue, red, yellow, we recognize that handily. The diamond shape there's your NFPA. They're very similar with the HMAS. DOT, you'll recognize those on containers also. The GHS doesn't supersede DOT. They go together. You're going to see the DOT label and the GHS. So let's take a look at these first. There's 9 of them. 6 of these are something we already recognize. They're DOT labels that are already in pictures on the labels that are already in use. So let's take a look at them. There's the exploding bomb or explosion hazard. Now remember, it's got to do with the chemical, not the container. Yes, a flammable liquids in a container overexposed to heat can explode, but the chemical's not explosive. It's the container. Sometimes that makes the chemical more dangerous. For instance, WD-40 is a non-haz oil, but that container could explode under the conditions of extreme heat. Here's 2 that go together a lot. Flammable on the left, and the exclamation point most of the time is going to be skin and eye irritant. So your solvents you use at work, acetone and various things, simple solvents, even gasoline, they're flammable and they're skin and eye irritant. These are the 2 GHS labels. The chemical manufacturer has to study the dangers of their chemical and look at the long definition for each one of these pictures, and any of these pictures and their hazard matches up with the chemical that the manufacturers put out. They have to put that pictogram on the label. If it's a hazardous material, it's going to have at least one label, one pictogram on the label, and it could have 5. I've seen 5 on a couple of different chemicals, 5 different pictograms out of the 9. Here's another one, very common, corrosive, obvious. We can tell what that is. We've seen it many times. The flaming O, as opposed to just the flame, this is oxidizers and organic peroxides. Here's cylinders under pressure and toxic. Recognize those. And here's a new one. Extreme health hazard. This could be cancer causing, reproductive organ problems, but more of an extreme, and a lot of times the chronic, the low dose over a long period of time. And then of course there's the last one, and this is an environmental label picture. And if you look closely, I guess we're looking at a dead tree and a dead fish. And no, I didn't draw that. I could have even drawn that. Now let's take a look at the label. Here we go. This is a flammable liquid, methanol, and you see the flame and the exclamation point. And there's the signal word, danger. And then number 3 there is showing hazard statements: highly flammable liquid and vapor, toxic if swallowed, on and on, causes damage to eyes. 4, precautionary statements: keep away from heat, sparks, flames. So here's what we're looking at. The hazard statements tell us how the chemical can affect us. The precautionary statements tell us how to protect ourselves. This is universal. This is how this label works. They don't all look the exact same. So let's take a look at another one. Here's acetone, a simple solvent. And there's the danger word. You see it. There's the pictograms that apply. Like I said, at least 1, could be 4 or 5 in extreme cases. So we've got, after the signal word, danger or warning, there's only 2. The more severe chemicals get danger. And then here's the hazard statements: highly flammable liquid and vapor, causes serious eye irritation. This is a typical solvent, a flammable liquid. They're all going to be very similar to this. And then the next part, the prevention, that's precautionary statements. The hazard statements above tell us how it affects us. Precautionary statements tell us how to protect ourselves, keep away from heat, and keep the container closed at all times. And then it always going to give us a little bit of first aid on there also. Okay, so that's basic. This is exactly what these labels look like. This is the GHS. Again, the chemical manufacturer studies the definition of their chemical, and then they study the definition of these pictures, and whatever matches up, that picture goes on your label. So just take a look at the label, and you'll see the pictures that will give you a good idea of what's going on. Then you can read the hazard statements, read the precautionary statements, and we're going to get into this a little more in the next video on SDSs, because section 2 is going to be this label. Section 2 on the SDS, they've just taken that information and put it over to this label, the GHS label. So no matter where you encounter a container, a drum, a box, a bucket, look at the label. You can see this one. There's the DOT label, flammable liquid, and then you can see, can't read it, but you can see the GHS label over there above it. So whether you're at work, you find a drum behind the warehouse that's been there for 20 years, a small stream where somebody's illegal dumped some stuff, you may find these labels. Or if you do find some that looks like it's hazardous, back away and call authorities. So no matter where you're at, especially at work, look at the labels. Look at the DOT, look at the GHS. The pictures tell the story. And when we get into the next video on SDSs, I'll show you how they connect. And we're going to look at an SDS in length, every section. So anyway, this is Terry with McHenry Creek Fishers. There's my number, there's my email, there's my website. Take a look. If you got any questions, see your supervisor, and don't fail to send me a note. Maybe I can help you. Just send me some questions. I'll be glad to answer them. If it's something I don't know, I'll look it up for you. All right, again, Terry, see you next time. Look forward to seeing you on the SDS video. Thanks. Have a great day.